temperatures come up quite a bit the last couple of days. It's been down, of course, below 0 at night and maybe about -10, and up just in the low teens in the daytime, and froze pretty hard. It warmed up a couple days ago, got up to 24, 25, 28 in the daytime, and it snowed a little bit. No, it didn't snow much, a couple inches. Well, now it's warming up some more, and it snowed a little bit again yesterday and last night. Again, not more than a couple inches, but warmed up to about 37 degrees or so, so everything was melting out there pretty good. Well, I had to get busy and get it all scraped down. As I've said before, the ground is froze up solid. It's really hard, and as this daytime temperature warms that snow up and stuff on there on the driveway, it melts and then it freezes to the driveway and makes it icy. So anyway, I got to keep that scraped down. So it's supposed to warm up to, well, it was 37 degrees today, 38 degrees today, so that wasn't too bad. It's supposed to warm up into the 40s the next couple of days, and we've got a Pacific storm coming in that's maybe get some winds up to 40, 50 miles an hour or more for a day or two, and so hopefully it'll stay warm like that now for a while. We can turn off a couple of the heaters. It's been so cold that we've had to turn on extra heaters in some of the places. I've had to put a heater in out in my pump shack for my water pump for the house, the cabin, and of course our water tank for the house froze up completely, so the only thing we use that for is to shower and to do laundry, so we've been having to take that stuff to town. That'll take a while for that to thaw out, because that's a 12,000 gallon tank and that's solid ice, so it takes a while for it to thaw out. So anyway, it's warmed up pretty nice. No excuse now not to do the powder coating, although as I've said before, the powder coating itself doesn't really care what the outside temperature is. Well, I was going to do that today once I got done scraping the driveway down, and I was getting ready to do that, but the oven was pretty dirty, pretty nasty in there, so I'm cleaning that out. Somebody had filled the dog food dish up too much with water and it boiled over and run down in the oven, and it made a mess in there, so I've got that getting cleaned out right now. Well, meanwhile, I'll go ahead and tap these bearing housings for Zerks. I've got those all polished up. Of course, this one doesn't need one. This one already had a Zerk in it. But I went ahead and drilled that, spotted it with a center drill, and then drilled it out with a number 3 drill. And now I'm tapping it with a quarter 28 tap, which is what the size is for a 1/4 inch Zerk. Okay, that goes in, and so that should intersect with this groove right here and grease up this groove where the bearing holes are, the grease holes in the bearing. So I'll have to knock the burr off of that, but that looks pretty good. So I'm going to take the Zerk out of there. I don't need, want that in there for powder coating this. Let's see here. I got one more of these bearings. These bearings here are for the main shaft. So I've got this one, I'll do it. And this one is for the lower bearing on the edger shaft. That one already had a Zerk in it and a grease groove in it. And there was one more here. Here it is. And this one is for the upper bearing for the edger shaft. And I put a groove in that one. And that one doesn't have a Zerk in it. So we'll put a Zerk in that one too. And then this one here is the one for the adjustable edger blade, and that one, the bearing that goes in there, is a sealed bearing, a lifetime bearing. It doesn't have a grease fitting in it, or it doesn't take grease in it. I've got a couple other things to do. This is that sleeve for the pulley that goes on the edger shaft. This is the pulley. This sleeve goes down in there. Let's see here. And then you got bolts that go down there that pull that sleeve in, or actually pulls this pulley out, and that squeezes down and that tightens this sleeve up on the shaft and on the pulley. So I got the sleeve sandblasted and I polished up this inside here. You can see there's some pits in there and stuff still from the rust, but I'm not going to try to take that all the way out. I need to do the same thing with this, put it on the lathe and polish it up a little bit, and maybe there's some hash marks on here. But before I do anything else, I've got this bolt in here that I put in. That was one of the bolts that I put in to try to pull this off there. You put 2 bolts in there, tighten them up. See, this is threaded for those 2 bolts. Tighten that up, and that's supposed to pull this sleeve off of there. And of course it didn't work, so that one bolt broke off in there. I've got to get it out. And then there's a few other little things that I've got to do, like here. This is almost pulled through on this flange. I think that's a spring that hooks on there, I'm not sure. But anyway, I'm going to weld that up, that hole up, and re-drill it. And then there's a couple of other things on here I got to work on. I got to figure out some way to take this pivot. This is the catch for the forward reverse lever that holds it in neutral, and that pivot on that thing there. So I've got to do something with that so that I can get that apart, make sure and get that cleaned up behind there, and painted, powder coated. And then there's a couple other spots on there that are like that have pins in them all. Here's another hole that is hogged out pretty good that I can weld up, and that one there. But I could go ahead and start powder coating a bunch of this stuff. Well, there's a burr on that I can take off. I'm going to drill this screw out, this bolt head out that's broken off in there. I've got a step drill. It's a real long drill bit, as I got from Boeing Surplus back when they were still in business, and they still had the outlet down there. So it's pretty sharp. It's got a smaller end on it than the shank. And anyway, I've got this in here upside down. I used an old broken off bearing race for a parallel to set that thing up so that it's off of the vise. And we'll see if we can't get that thing going there. Got to center that. Sometimes what I'll do on these screws, I'll take a Dremel or something with a grinder point on it and try to flatten them off, and then put a dimple in the center of it to make it easier to get the drill in the center. This one went in pretty good. I've got it upside down, so we had the machined off end of the screw in there. Oh, it's off center a little bit. I was hoping that might just walk out of there since I have it upside down, but it's not going to do it. Turning a little bit. One of the problems with those easy outs is that as they screw in, they're putting pressure out on the screw that you're trying to get out, which actually forces them in tighter. Now I'm going to drill this hole all the way through. Well, I got this piece. This is that tapered piece that goes down into the, where'd that go? Anyway, that pulley, that gang pulley here, tapered piece that goes down to it, and it was kind of hashed up here on the edges of it and stuff there in the front. And of course it had that one bolt broke off in it. I got the bolt out yesterday, and then I took this up to the lathe and just barely turned enough off of the face of this to get it cleaned up, and the outer edge of it, took the hash marks off of that. There's still hash marks in them, but I'm not taking those down. And then I took a tap and run down through these holes here that are used for the drivers for the screws that are pullers to pull this apart. And then I polished up the face of this. So that looks a lot better than it did. That's I wound up powder coating the outside of this and stuff, and then the face of it will be shiny and go down, fit down in that thing and tighten up on that shaft.